it.
Trying to get like you, Sherron.
No, man, you ain't getting like me. Man.
I just want to play golf every day. That's what I meant by that. I think me and Patrick had this exact conversation. I'm like, this guy's a genius or he's crazy because Southern Indiana will crucify him for losing their first game by 50 at home.
Man, that's probably where I'd be at right now if I wasn't here.
Era Sports.
This podcast episode was brought to you by Big G Supply, located in Charlestown. Guys, if you need any plumbing material, and I mean anything, you need to call Larry and Gary at 812-256-6495. I can personally vouch. I bought a shower input from them. It was the best price in the game. I also bought a shower head, a Delta brand. It was great. Great service. They are Charlestown located. They are locally owned. And look, they're going to take care of you. Don't go to the big stores to buy your stuff. Call them today to take care of all your plumbing needs.
Welcome back to the Era Sports Podcast, where for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about basketball. Today, I have a really cool opportunity, maybe the most talked about team in the state right now. So this will be a big podcast episode. Coach, how are you, man?
I'm doing fantastic, guys.
Thank you for making time. I know your golf schedule's busy, right? Big golfer.
Man, that's probably where I'd be at right now if I wasn't here. Yeah, man.
I think we've talked on the phone 3 or 4 times, and at least 2 of them are like, hey, man, I'm getting ready to go golf. I'm like, man, the life you live.
Well, when you're a McDonald's All-American, I mean, you do that sort of stuff.
Competitive, fellas. Competitive, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
Incoming third year at Jeff. It's pretty cool when coaches get to come back and coach where you played. So tell me a little bit about that experience and when that opportunity came to be like, hey, I could be the head coach at Jeff. How did that all play out?
Man, I think as a former player, it's always a dream to be able to go back to your alma mater and help. Man, it's where I got my start. It's where I've gotten every opportunity in my life from was because of what I was able to accomplish at Jeffersonville as a student athlete. Man, so had a huge impact on my life in every regard. So to be able to go back and lead the program and to share experiences, man, it's been a dream come true.
Tell me a little bit about, since you're talking about that time, what was it like playing at Jeff? Your teams were not, they were okay, right? Right, Patrick? They weren't like,
Pretty solid. I mean, just regular.
What was that experience like?
Guys, I will tell you, man, it was, this is the best way I can describe it. It was divine intervention. I'll tell you this, guys. My junior year, we had 7 Division I players on one team, and out of the 7, 3 of us was supposed to be at New Albany. So it was kind of funny the way that it all happened, because we all moved to Jeffersonville.
Can we talk more about that? How did that go about?
Myself, Michael Harris, and Corey Norman, we're all originally from New Albany. All of our families are in New Albany, still to this day. Most of our families are in New Albany. And again, fellas, I say this, but
all the New Albany people just threw whatever they had in their hands.
I mean, man, I like it genuinely, man. It was the heavens, man, that put us together during that time. I mean,
because your brother was a New Albany kid too, right?
My
Shannon,
cousin.
Your cousin.
Yeah, my cousin Shannon.
Okay.
Yeah, his mother and my mother are sisters.
Gotcha.
So we're first cousins. And man, so obviously that's where my family is. So you see, man, that's where I was supposed to be.
And I keep Patrick on these podcasts because I have to tell people, I'm the young guy. I'm 26, so I don't remember a lot. But like, it seemed like when we have all these coaches on here, the era of basketball that you guys played in high school was super important for Southern Indiana and how good it was.
It was really good, fellas.
Tell me about some of the players you had to play against.
That early 90s.
Fellas, in fact, we was just going through the track that we had to go through in the tournament our junior and senior year. And we was looking at state finals my junior year against Richmond. And we was looking at the track that we had to go through. We had to beat Borden. Borden had Brent Weatherford, who was really, really good. In fact, I think Borden came into the sectional. I think they might have been 25-2 at the time. I mean, man. So, and then we had Providence that we had to go through. They had some really, really good players. Let me see who was at Providence.
And for people who don't know, what years did you play high school basketball?
I was 90 to 93.
Okay.
So I'm not for sure if you guys remember this name or not. Chad Kraft went to Providence. Really, really good player.
Okay.
Yeah, man, and I think it goes to show you the depth of talent that we had in Southern Indiana, because you got guys that was really good that sometimes fall under the radar because, man, we had players that was really, really good. I mean,
and I'm trying to go back on John Harrell look, and they don't even. Coach, you're so old, that's not even on John Harrell.
I mean, man, fellas, it was 30 years, 35 years ago. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
You played on, was it ESPN or HBO or something? You played New Albany. There was a game you played.
No, it was actually a pay-per-view.
Pay-per-view game.
Yep. During that time, man, it was.
Which this was before any of that big-time media and all that. I mean, that's how big a game this was.
Yeah, that's right.
What game was that?
It was a New Albany Jeff game. I believe it was 93 or 92.
Actually, it was both my junior year and my senior year. Both games was on pay-per-view. It was that big.
Crazy.
I wonder if you go back and find it. That'd be cool to watch. But so what was the sectional like back then? It still hosted at Seymour. How was it?
Actually, it was at Jeffersonville.
At Jeffersonville. Okay.
Yeah.
Look at all this.
So sectional was at Jeffersonville. Regional was at Seymour. And then the semi-state rotated between Terre Haute and Evansville.
Okay. And then tell me about the All-Star team that year. If there's that much talent, you make the Indiana All-Stars.
Jesus. Yeah. I won Mr. Basketball by 2 votes. Kojak Fuller finished second. 5'8" guy who was unbelievable.
Okay.
Probably, other than Ladrell Whitehead, probably the best player that I've ever seen under 6 foot. Amazing.
Ladrell versus Kojak. Who you got? Yeah, that's a tough one.
That's a big pause right there.
Ladrell.
I got you.
Well,
So let's go in. And so you played there. It's great. You Mr. Basketball, amazing. Jersey's still on the school that you get to coach at, which is awesome. Your recruitment, you end up at IU, and you play for this guy. I think his name's Bobby Knight.
Yeah, maybe you've heard of him.
I don't know if you've heard of him, but what was that like? What was that like going to the mecca of basketball in the country, and then you go play all this basketball in high school with all these good teams on pay-per-view, and then you get to go one more level, and you get to go to Indiana with Bob Knight. How was all that?
Life-changing. I think the best way that I can put it in perspective with Coach Knight. So think about this. Coach Knight coached for 35 years, and he probably impacted more people than most. And specifically, I think that his impact was so powerful, man, that he impacted people that he never met. And I think that puts in perspective, man, his aura.
Yeah.
Man, and that's a powerful thing to be able to affect another human being when you don't even meet them. Man, so I think it puts in perspective, man. I think it puts in perspective the way that he led his life. Man, and it's I'm not for sure that you can lead a better life than to lead by example, if that makes sense.
Do you have a favorite Bobby Knight story?
I got a couple of them.
There's Miller Kopp, who played the last year. We got to ask him on the podcast, and he got to meet Bobby Knight for the first time. He puts the window down, and Miller says, "Hey, Coach Knight, he said, I don't. Well,
Yeah,
I'll bleep it out." He said, "I don't give a f- what your name is. You play defense," and he just put the window up, and they never shook hands. I'm like, so after that story, can you keep what's your top story?
So I got a lot of them. I got a lot of them. Probably one of the best ones that I like to tell is the one about Michael Jordan. And it's just like, for whatever the reason, like it's just becoming like viral for some reason. But he tells a story about coaching Jordan in the Olympics, 1984, and they're at a game. It's halftime, and he's a coach, man, that he always wants to find something that he can point out that you can do better at. Right? It's just what he is. It's how he coaches. It's his philosophy. So at this particular game, they came in at halftime, and I can't remember the exact stat, but Jordan was like, he almost had a triple-double at halftime. And Coach is walking across the floor going into the locker room, thinking to himself, man, what can I say? Man, they're up 15, 20 points. Mm-hmm. They've played some of the best basketball that you could play. So, like, Coach has to find something to address. So he's thinking. He goes to the door and opens up the locker room door, and there says Jordan. Jordan's the best player on the team. So Coach looks at Jordan and he says, Mike, he says, you doing everything but setting screens, son. If I want 5 guys on the floor to screen, I got to get you out of the game. And again, you got to remember, he almost had a triple-double. So Jordan looked at Coach and he said, hey, Coach. He said, man, didn't I just recently read where you said I was one of the fastest guys that you've ever coached? Coach said, yeah, what the hell does that got to do with you screening, son?
Yeah.
He said, Coach, I'm setting them so fast you can't see.
Yeah, man.
So, I mean, man, and I think, like, that puts in perspective, man. And if you get a smile out of Coach Knight when he is coaching you, like, I think that speaks about the challenge, man, that was met.
And that's a hell of a selling point. I mean, Bobby Knight can come in and say, look, I've coached the U.S. team. I've coached Michael Jordan back in 92, 93. And you're thinking, yeah, I want to be a part of this. I want to get where he's at.
Man, I would tell you guys, man, I went to play for Coach Knight for one reason. I mean, man, I knew that he would prepare me for life.
Yeah.
I mean, at that time, fellas, I never thought that I could play in the NBA. Like, it was a dream, right? But, like, it wasn't, in my humble opinion, it wasn't something that was attainable at that time. I mean, man, and that's something else too, fellas. As man, I think obviously we all do it, right, man? Like, you get to a certain age and then you start to reminisce about things in your life and you play it back. And I mean, man, I think that you play out different scenarios of how it could have potentially, went differently, right? I mean, man, and being in this position, being the head coach of Jeffersonville, man, I was once Trey, I was once PJ, I was once Michael Cooper. I was once those guys, right? I mean, man, and on my path, I mean, man, like, I had general information, right? But these guys is getting information, man, that typically players don't get until they're at the professional level.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, man, so I think that the information that these kids are getting nowadays is so much further advanced than what we was getting.
Yeah.
I mean, man, so, and I do, fellas, I think that it gives a greater chance of success when you have that right information at an early age.
But I would say a lot of that is because you've been through that experience and you're able to kind of help guide them of the process.
Fellas, I will argue to this day, fellas, man, that it's really, really difficult to teach something that you've never done. Like, we can read about it, like, right? But, like, if you become an airplane pilot, how many hours do you have on the flight simulator?
Sure.
If you become a surgeon, how many hours do you have to be under the needle? I mean, man, to get that experience, right? So, man, I think that it's an added extra advantage if you are teaching something that you've already done. I mean, man, I think that you can lean on experiences, man, that can really paint an accurate picture.
For sure.
Well, when you talk about those three guys, which we'll get into your team here in a second, something we're asking a lot of the coaches is you can't do what you do without your support, which is your assistant coaches.
It's impossible.
And in my opinion, you got some cool cats there on the sideline. I'm trying to name them in my head right now. So tell me about who are your guys and how do they help you?
So we got Josh Lowry, we got Michael Fitzgerald, we got Kyle Mantle-Smith, we got Clark Miles, and then we got Chris Carter. And I would tell you, fellas, and I'm not just saying this, man. Like, I'm not one of those guys that try to sensationalize things. I mean, man, what you get with me, fellas, is what it is. I mean, man, and I do, fellas, I think that we have one of the best staffs in the state at any level. And I'm talking at the Division I level as well. And I mean no disrespect. And let me be clear in saying this, folks. Like, a lot of times, man, like, I will give you a hard example real fast. Like, everybody says that Coach Knight was a great X's and O coach. Here's what they don't know about Coach Knight. Coach Knight had no set plays. Not on baseline, not on sideline, not on press break, not zone, there was no set plays. So for people to make the comment, man, oh, he's a great X's and O coach, I will argue that. I will argue, man, that he's a great coach at teaching recognition. And if you can teach recognition, it doesn't matter what the situation is. I mean, man, so that in itself, I think, man, is our advantage per se, if that makes sense.
You got good guys. I know Josh and Mike personally, and Coach Miles is a legend. So, like,
I was going to say, was he born on the Jeffersonville bench? He's been around for a minute, hasn't he?
So, man, Coach Miles has, in fact, fellas, Coach Miles coached me.
Yeah.
He's been the rock of our community, fellas, and he has survived every coach that has come through our program since, I believe, Coach Broughton was there. He's been through them all. I mean, man, he's seen all the kids. He's touched all the kids.
Good.
I mean, man, in more ways, he's touched every player that has come through this program in more ways than anybody could ever fathom. I mean, man, and I think that speaks to his longevity, his leadership, and his sustainability from a character standpoint.
For sure.
Yeah.
all right, let's elephant in the room. Let's talk about the big three. And I myself am guilty of it. You are more than three. Your team below that is high level as it can get as well. So Me and him have talked about it every podcast. Michael PJ Trey. But let's talk about some of the other guys too, because you got a great team.
Yeah, a lot of guys even up all around the state in Indianapolis, they talk about those three, and I'm like, well, hold on.
And they deserve every talk.
Yeah,
but
there's a few more. I mean, let's not sleep on some of these other ones.
Man, fellas, I think sometimes, man, that people have to forget that basketball is a team sport, right? And I tell our guys in our program, here's our message: it doesn't matter how good our good players are, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Man, so if we got 3 really good players, but the other 9 guys can't carry their weight, then the other 3 don't matter. Man, so these guys are really lucky to have a supporting cast like they have, because that has afforded them the opportunity to gain the success that they've been able to gain. Man, and I think that it's something that obviously in the media, man, it's really difficult sometimes, because the media's job is to cover what is the happening thing at the time. Man, and let me say this, man, you guys have done a hell of a job, man.
Appreciate that.
Really have. You guys have impacted the industry, man, at a really, really high level. And man, I just wanted to say that, man.
We're trying to get like you, Sherron.
No, man, you ain't getting like me, man.
I just want to play golf every day. That's what I meant by that. Let's talk about the season. So you know, as a coach coming in, I don't know if it was you or if it was the AD or whatnot, but you scheduled Cathedral as your first game as the head coach with your boys, and of course you we'll talk about last year, but the year before that too. But you take an L. What is that? What's the conversation with your boys? Is it like, hang on, put your seatbelt on, we're going to keep going, or were they defeated? What was that like?
It's a couple of things. First, when I got hired in, they told me that they had a group of players that was similar to ours. And I would tell you fellas, like, during that time was really, really important for us. Man, and we take that very seriously.
Yeah.
Man, so to have a professional say, we got guys that was like you, it immediately piqued my interest. Because I think for us, man, please, being as humble as possible, I thought that we had a really, really special group. Man, so for a person to say that 35 years later, it's like, really? So,
like, let me see this.
When really, like when I got the job immediately, I was like, I could see why they say that they got a group like we had.
Well, and for me and Patrick too, it's cool to look back, because I have family that's in the same class as him, as these guys. So I've watched these guys play since literally second grade, all 3 of them together. And so we try to tell people outside of our area that, like, this isn't a fluke. These guys have been playing, and they're brothers, and they do everything together.
Yeah, and talk about rare. I mean, especially at a big school like that, they went through all the grades together. They've grown up together.
The facts, and that's and I do, fellas. I think that is why they're doing what they're doing now. Because of the tight knitness of the core group, and it's permeated through our entire program.
And they keep their voices down too, because when you get that level, you could listen to a lot of people, but they really do keep it tight knit, and they listen to a very few voices. And I think that's why they're so talented, man.
Fellas, I would tell you, man, and here's where it started, because when I very first got the job, remember they had told me that they was very similar to us. So as a coach, man, I truly believe that as a coach, you have to empower the players, right? So our first team meeting, I asked them, I said, how do you want me to run the program? Do you want me to run the program to get you ready for the Division I level, or do you want me to run the program according to Southern Indiana standards? And they picked Division I program. When they picked that, I reiterated, fellas, are you sure? Because if we're going to go this route, it's going to be the hardest thing that you've ever had to do. And certain days, you're going to hate me.
Yeah. And after that Cathedral game, you had to remind them, right? Like, yeah, this is why we went through this.
So we brought Cathedral in because we had to paint an accurate picture of what it meant to compete at the state level. And at that time, they had the #1 player in the country in their program. So what better way to get a message across than to bring them in? Man, and I would tell you guys, Coach Delaney really helped us out, fellas, because you got the #1 player in the country. You sign a 3-year contract and you go there first. Man, I'm not for sure that people really understand, the favor that he did for us. Man, and I do. I want to make sure that publicly, man, that is acknowledged, because, man, really he could have put us in a tough spot. and say, "No, man, you come up here." I mean, man. So, but he did. He did us a huge favor, and and let me say this, fellas, like their journey started their freshman year, the year before I got here. They got beat 50 in the sectional by Floyd Central, and then the first game to start a new era for a new coach, they get beat 50.
Yeah,
I think me and Patrick had this exact conversation. I'm like, this guy's a genius or he's crazy because Southern Indiana will crucify him for losing their first game by 50 at home.
I'm thinking about you're running a risk of I might lose these kids. Go into that process like, hey, we're getting beat like this. Am I going to lose these guys? Go into that a little bit more.
That was a conversation that we had deeply around Christmas time of this past year.
Okay.
Because this is what coaches have, and fellas, and this is why the temperament of coaching has changed. Right here, what I'm about to tell you. If you push kids and challenge kids the way that we do, and they don't get the results, you lose them.
Yep.
That's why the transfer portal has 1,100 kids in it. Mm-hmm. So what we've done is we made sure first, and this is something that I think is really, really important. I think first, man, that coaches have to understand, man, that kids nowadays, they live in a C generation. So as a coach and as the leader, they have to see you be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. If they see you be vulnerable, when you go to push them and get on them, man, then they will accept it. I mean, man, and our kids and our parents, man, they did a really, really good job of giving us blind trust when we went to push them, man, to get them to the next level.
And you talk about that little stretch. I think it was Kokomo, South Bend, Riley, Lawrence Central, back to back to back. And that's a brutal.
And the way the game ended it against Riley was like, man.
That was the one, fellas. So if there was there's always 5 things that happen that changes the trajectory of a program. Mm-hmm. That South Bend Riley game was one of them, and then the second of the 5 was the Brown Towns game. Mm-hmm. That's when it flipped. I mean, man and fellas, and you got to understand up until that point, just, think about what we had been through up until that point, man, of trying to get the culture in that we needed to get to this point.
Well, you only had 7 regular season losses, and 3 of them happened back to back to back. So it's like
that. Yes,
that's a big chunk of that whole year. And you look at your boys, and like I said, I've been around them for a long time, and the guys that you hit on there, it's like never. And you had Jeremy Rose too, who came in, who graduated, but like they're just dogs. They don't. At no point, if you're on the floor, you're like they're gonna lose. Like it's just they'll always fight back. You might take the L's, but I'm saying like they fight with each other so well. It's so fun to watch.
Man, I think the thing is, and this is what they already had a great foundation. But in order to play at the level that we're at right now, it takes a completely different mindset. And here's what hurt them. The very thing that made them who they are was the very thing that made it difficult to get them to this level. And here's why I say that. They had a lot of success at a very, very young age. Mm-hmm. They got to the high school level, they went undefeated at the JV level, right? But just because you go undefeated at the JV level doesn't necessarily translate to the varsity level. Mm-hmm. And a big piece of that is a couple of different things. Number one, your preparation. Like the preparation at the varsity level, especially in the state of Indiana, is equal to the college level. Some of these coaches, it's amazing to have to get ready to play.
If you want to try to win a state title.
Facts, at a high level, it's a different deal. I mean, man, so that was the piece. That's the final piece that they needed to get to where they are today. And unfortunately, fellas, there is no shortcut to get to that point.
Mm-mm. For people watching this podcast too, and I want to know, what was that Center Grove game like at Center Grove? You guys lost. Mm-hmm. You were on a roll. Uh-huh. I don't think that Center Grove team should have beat you.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because not sugarcoating. I think it was a pretty good loss.
That was the loss that flipped it for us. Fellas, you have to remember, man, like we started from what I consider to be square one, right? And then we was trying to get them to square 10, right? So as you are going down that journey, man, you're going to take 3 steps forward and then take 5 steps backwards. And the question is, man, how can you deal with that adversity, man, of losing 2 steps when you've worked so hard? I mean, man, and the way that I equate it to, or the way that I make sense of it all, And I equate it to golf. Like, think about all of the people that enter golf tournaments. There's only one person that gets the reward for their hard work.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, man, so, like, just because you put in the work don't mean that you're going to get the reward.
Yep.
Like, man, you may have to go through that many, many times before you get to the other side of the wall. I mean, man, and thank God, man, that they gravitated to that message, man, and it worked out for us.
Me and Patrick were both there, but even the team that played, you guys got the win, but at Jennings County, that team versus the team in the run and march were completely different. Mm-hmm. It was like two different
that was
teams.
That was Sean's first or second game out too. So I think you kind of had to get used to a little of that.
I think you guys saw after what it looks like after you come through the fire.
Yeah.
Like, I think that in sports, man, you have to fail before you succeed at a high level. Like, I mean, we talk about it, and I told these guys, man, like, yes, it's one thing, man, to be successful at the middle school level. Mm-hmm. Like, I get it. But it's another thing to be successful at the high school level, man, and be able to sustain that level of play.
Yeah.
Man, in the level of play at the high school level specifically and at the college level, it's not necessarily the talent. I mean, man, it's more mental toughness than it is the talent. I mean, man, and if you haven't been able to go through the fire to develop that mental toughness, it ain't gonna work.
What's the schedule looking like? Who's on Jeffersonville's schedule this year? I know you're not afraid of anyone.
That's the thing, fellas. I mean, man, I think it's important that you not be afraid. I mean, man, because people questioned last year our schedule because we only had 7 home games.
That was brutal.
Yeah,
so as a filmer, I'm like, come on, man.
But here's the thing. From a scheduling perspective, man, your home games is 2 things. Number 1, man, you generate revenue. Number 2, you keep your fans happy. Mm-hmm. Right? But what does it do for you to get ready for the tournament? How many games do you play at home in a tournament?
None for you all.
Right? Like, man, you don't play any home games at the tournament. So, and ultimately, that's what your season is going to be based on, is how you do in the tournament. Man, so we had to get ourselves ready mentally to face this grind in the state of Indiana for the tournament.
Yep.
Their sophomore year, we was up 15 at halftime and got beat in the sectional.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, man, so from that point, and I told the coaches, I said, we got to turn the heat up.
Yeah.
As soon as we lost that game, I went in the locker room and I said, fellas, we have to turn the heat up. And they all looked at me like, huh? Like, we got to turn it up.
And I think going on the road and playing those Center Groves, South Bend Riley, Fishers,
Kokomo,
that separates you from being a good Southern Indiana team to a state title contender.
Man, I think, fellas, like, if you don't put yourselves in those situations, then you never learn how to face it when you're in those situations. Yep. So I want those pressured situations to be normal, right? I don't want it to be, oh, man, we've never been here. I'll give you guys a quick story. My sophomore year, when Coach Broughton very first took the job, we lost the first game of the year to Charlestown by 27.
Okay.
And then we went on a run, and we didn't lose again until, I don't think we even lost again, fellas, until like right before the tournament was about to start. And then we got all the way to the semi-state, right? And during that time, man, Coach Broughton, he did a really good job of allowing us to be ourselves. Like, we always had music playing in the locker room before the games. Mm-hmm. Well, my sophomore year before the game, he came in the locker room and wasn't no music playing. You know why wasn't no music playing? We were scared to death at the moment. We'd never been there before. Didn't know what to expect. Didn't know how to prepare. Didn't know how to deal with it. Didn't know how to handle it. Man, so we failed. Man, so I wanted to make sure that with these guys, they learned it as soon as possible. I wish I could have got here their freshman year because I'd have threw them to the fire then.
I got to talk about the similarities between you made the Final Four back in '92, lost in the semifinals this past year, Final Four, game before the state title. Do you guys talk about that? Do you realize that? Do you recognize that? And kind of what goes into that?
We talk about it every day.
All right. We
talked about it heavily today.
Yep.
In fact, I showed the last 30 seconds of the game from my junior year when we got beat. So, fellas, it's great for everybody to say, hey, man, you're going to win the state championship. Here's what people don't realize. There's 2 things that you have to look at. Number 1, you have to control the controllables. We've been able to control the controllables, which is the reason that people are saying you're going to win the state championship. Here's the other piece that you have to have that we can't control. You have to be lucky.
Gotta be lucky in March.
You gotta be lucky.
Gotta be healthy. Gotta be.
Man, you gotta be lucky, fellas. Like, fellas, Jeffersonville's been in existence for 180 years, 50 years. We won the state championship once. Yep. And during that run, like, we was lucky twice. People don't realize, man, White River Valley had us on the ropes at the semi-state, number one. And then number two, in the state championship game, if Brian Hanley doesn't make that great play, we lose. I mean, man, so, like, along the way, you have to have some luck. I mean, unless you're just leaps and bounds above the competitors, i.e. UConn, like, man, you're going to have some luck.
Yeah.
I mean, man, so we're going to have to get lucky in order to get this thing done. We've done a good job thus far of putting ourselves in position to have a chance, and that's what I'm most proudest of. But let me say this, fellas. Ultimately, man, my humble opinion, once we get these guys signed, sealed, and delivered, man, like, we already won. I mean, man, these guys are getting free educations. They're going to be able to go on and grow as people, grow as students, hopefully grow as basketball players, and go on and become successful adults.
They're good kids too. It's not like they're idiots. Like they're
not by any stretch.
So one last thing, wanted to congratulate you on the Hall of Fame Classic. That's a really big deal in the state of Indiana for you guys.
Absolutely.
Talk about getting luck. You just talked about getting luck. I mean,
divine intervention, fellas. Like, really, it's. I think Jeffersonville as a program has been to the Hall of Fame once. This will be our second time.
Yeah.
I was part of the first group that was able to go.
And what happened that season?
We got beat by Richmond.
No, but you won. You won the state.
Yeah. So at that time,
the similarities here.
I will be honest with you, fellas. At that time, man, the big to-do was whoever won the Hall of Fame didn't win the state championship.
You were supposed to play Anderson.
That's right.
And that didn't work out like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that was, I mean, man, and I'm not for sure what the history how the history has played out since then. But like whoever don't win the Hall of Fame typically wins the state championship. So I would have to do my research on that, but that was the thing for us back when we made our run.
So Coach Wilk might throw the game. Is that what? No, I'm just kidding.
I got one quick one here for all the Jeffersonville fans. Your Mount Rushmore or starting 5 all time of Jeff basketball players?
Ooh.
I know. I had to ask it while you're here.
Fellas, that's tough.
Absolutely tough.
I mean, man, it's really hard, fellas, because, man, it's really hard for me to pick anybody over the fellas that I went to war with.
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard. I mean, man, and
I'm gonna say you and Hanley are definitely in that mix.
I mean, fellas, I would tell you, man, I'm not for sure that so my junior year, like, you got to, like, Michael Harris and Joe Estes has to be in the conversation. Like, and I'm thinking about seniors, right? Like, so then my senior year, myself and BJ Flynn. Yeah. I mean, man, and then after I leave, Corey Norman and Brian Hanley. I mean, man, and then I think about Daryl Baker. And then I think about Antonio Ballard. Then I think about Jeremy Kendall.
King Clark.
Then I think about Dennis Coutey. I think about Bryant Northern. I mean, I think about
Mike Flynn,
Michael. Man, Tommy Baker. Yeah. Like, guys, you guys are like, it's, and man, and again, I say that, fellas, because, like, put in perspective, man, of what Jeffersonville has had, and put in perspective how many times we've won the state championship.
Yeah.
I mean, man, I think that puts in perspective how difficult it really, really is in the state of Indiana. I mean, man, so this is what I would tell you. Is our current group able to be involved in the potential pick for Mount Rushmore? Because I can tell you, fellas, we got 4 really, really good players, man, that over the summer people really didn't get to see Sean Boyd because he was injured.
Sean, I didn't see Ray a lot.
I mean, Ray's a football player. He's a multi-sport athlete.
You got a new kid coming in we don't know if you can talk about.
We got, really, fellas, like, I mean, man, and that's the thing. Like, for me, it's like, all the pressure is on me, man, because if I mess it up, man.
Well,
so that's the good
Coach.
There's a few other teams think it's their year too, so it's not just a given. You got to go out and make it happen.
No, I think that there's 5 or 6 teams in the state that can win it, fellas. And in fact, if you really want to know the truth, I think it's probably 10 teams when you talk about getting into the season and coaches getting their footprint in and their culture in place and their game plans together. I mean, man, you're talking about coaches that can get it done on any given night in the state of Indiana.
I think there's a team in Fishers that's planning to make a nice
there's a
little
team
run.
in Fishers. There's a team in Indianapolis, Ben Davis. There's a team, in Carmel. There's a team. Fellas, like, take your pick. Fellas, and I would tell you, man, I know that Kokomo has lost Flory, but, they
keep a lot too. But.
Man, we got great coaches in the state, fellas.
Yeah. Coach, thanks for coming out. We appreciate you. Guys, if you don't do anything else this winter, go to a Jeffersonville basketball game. You won't regret it. So, as always, please like, share, subscribe these, and stay tuned for our next episode. Thanks, guys.
Era Sports. We're at the game.